is Rita Week. She's our resident scientist in NWABR. She's going to help me out here with my voice. So when you're doing a frame, you want to use something you know about the audience to make your science message relevant. The next example is a moral frame. And morals are a way of looking at the kind of world that you want to live in, the kind of person that you want to be, and looking at things that we ought to do or ought not to do. And so in this case, this participant is commenting on whether or not we ought to go ahead with genetic technology.
God created us with intellect. He created us with curiosity. He has given us the tools and the means by which to continue to ask questions and continue to expand our knowledge of the universe. And so I believe that, if God didn't want us to be doing this, He wouldn't be doing this.
So again, I would say that's a positive framing about genetic technology under the moral frame. This last one, which we'll call the third way, is something that was really excited to discover in my research. This idea that there's an alternative or a compromise position or a common ground frame, which is the entire purpose of studying your audience in advance. If you can find out what makes them tick and what brings you to a common ground basis, that you can relate something from their worldview with the science message that you have to share with them, you're going to really be able to make a whole lot of progress with them. So if you look at this from a perspective, this quote that is from a perspective of making it depolarizing an issue, making it less black and white, this is what this person is getting at.
I think the larger context for me would be, how do we value human life as a whole? How do we do fertility research or stem cell research in a way that values human life? I think there's value for human life in most of this work, if not all of this work. But it's, who are we valuing? Or do we value one group over another? Or are we trying to create something for this group that might not be available to others?
Thank you so much, Rita. So I think what I hope you notice here is that this person is really wrestling with whether or not genetic technology is something that should be pursued, and if so, how? And so I take this as, I'm giving it the name of social justice. So in this case with this group, if I was going to go back and give them a talk, I would start off by using a social justice frame for any kind of scientific message I was going to present to them. This next slide I think is really interesting. It's going to show you that the way that a message is framed impacts the way your audience receives it, even if the message itself is the same. So there was a case study done in 2001 that's nationally representative, where a couple of groups were looking at whether or not the public would approve publicly funded stem cell research, embryonic stem cell research. When the first two frames were used of social progress or economic development, which are typically frames used by proponents of embryonic stem cell research, 65% of people would have supported the public funding of embryonic stem cell research. However, when the same question was asked, but using a different frame, that is the moral frame, where words like live embryo destruction were used, an overwhelming 70% of people did not want to have publicly funded embryonic stem cell research. So even though the overall question was the same, the way that the message was framed impacted the audience's response or opinion.